Grandmother reveals that her daughter called her homeless and told her to move out. After years of sacrificing for her family, betrayal comes from where she least expected it. What was supposed to be a home turned into a nightmare of rejection. Now, she needs to start over, but the pain of this humiliation will mark her forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Evelyn adjusted her reading glasses and looked out the kitchen window, observing the flowers in the small garden she had cultivated for more than 40 years. At 71, she still maintained her routine of watering the plants every morning, preparing coffee in the same blue cup she had received as a wedding gift, and waiting for the phone to ring. It always rang. It was Melissa, her 45-year-old daughter, with some new worry, some new problem that needed to be solved. The phone rang promptly at 8 in the morning. Evelyn smiled involuntarily, as if it were a surprise, although she knew it wasn't. "Good morning, Mum. How did you sleep?" Melissa's voice sounded tired, carrying a tension that Evelyn had learned to recognize in recent years. "Well, my dear? And you, how are the kids?" Evelyn settled into the kitchen chair, preparing for another conversation that would last at least an hour. "The kids are fine, but Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come over this afternoon?" Evelyn felt a tightness in her chest. In recent weeks, Melissa had developed the habit of appearing with important conversations that always ended with Evelyn feeling guilty about something she didn't even know she had done. Since her daughter's complicated divorce 2 years ago, these visits had become more frequent and always left Evelyn with a strange feeling, as if she were losing something she couldn't identify. "Of course, dear. You know you can always come here. I'll make that chocolate cake you like." After hanging up the phone, Evelyn stood in the kitchen for a few minutes, looking at her own hands. They were hands that had worked a lifetime, cared for 3 children, prepared thousands of meals, consoled tears, applauded achievements. Hands that had signed loan papers to help her children, that had given up savings for others' emergencies, that had always been available when someone needed them. She began to prepare the ingredients for the cake, an automatic movement that calmed her. As she sifted the flour, she remembered when Melissa was little and helped her in the kitchen, climbing onto a small chair to reach the counter. Where had that sweet, affectionate girl gone? When had she transformed into this always worried woman, always needing something? The morning passed slowly. Evelyn cleaned the house, which was already clean, organized drawers that were already organized, watered the plants again that had already been watered. These were strategies she had developed to control the anxiety she always felt when Melissa scheduled these important conversations. At 3 in the afternoon, Melissa arrived driving a car that Evelyn didn't recognize. It was a newer, more expensive model than what she drove before. Evelyn frowned but didn't comment. Melissa always had explanations for everything. "What a nice car, honey. Is it new?" Melissa quickly kissed her mother's cheek, avoiding direct eye contact. "It's borrowed from a friend. Mine is in the shop." They sat in the living room, the same one where Evelyn had received visitors for decades. The floral sofa was still in good condition, as was the solid wood coffee table that had belonged to her mother. Melissa looked around as if she were evaluating each piece of furniture, each detail of the decoration. "Mum, have you thought about the future, about how to protect everything you've built?" Melissa gestured vaguely toward the furniture. Evelyn felt a chill in her stomach. "What do you mean, dear? You know you're getting older, right? And nowadays there are so many scams, so many ill-intentioned people taking advantage of the elderly. I read a terrible report about a lady who lost her entire house to fraudsters. But I don't talk to strangers, Melissa. I never answer calls from numbers I don't know. Mom, it's not just that. There are more sophisticated scams, people who pose as relatives, bank employees, lawyers. They study people's lives, discover intimate details, and use that to deceive." Melissa leaned forward, her face tense with concern. "You have a beautiful house, well located, worth a lot of money. You're a potential target." Evelyn felt her heart race. It was true that she had read about scams against the elderly in the newspapers. It was true that her house, inherited, from her parents and renovated over the years, was worth much, more today than when they bought it. It was true that she sometimes felt vulnerable, especially since Martin had passed away 3 years ago. "What do you think I should do?" Melissa smiled, but Evelyn noticed that the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I've researched a lot about this, Mom. I talked to lawyers, to people who understand these things. The best way to protect your assets is to transfer the property to someone you trust, someone in the family." "Transfer? It would just be on paper, Mum. You would continue living here. It would still be your house. But legally, it would be protected. If someone tried to scam you, they wouldn't succeed because the house wouldn't be in your name anymore." Evelyn felt a tightness in her chest. Something about that conversation didn't seem right, but she couldn't identify what. Melissa spoke with such conviction, with so many technical details, that she really seemed concerned about her mother's well-being. "But why do I need to do this now? I feel fine. My mind is clear." "Mom, that's exactly why you need to do it. Now, when a person is no longer in a condition to make decisions, it becomes much more complicated. And look, you may be feeling fine, but sometimes we don't notice small changes. Last week you forgot to turn off the stove, remember?" Evelyn remembered. She had gone out to water the plants and forgotten a pot on the stove. Nothing had happened, but Melissa had arrived at that moment and made a huge drama about the incident. "It was just forgetfulness, Melissa. Everyone forgets things sometimes." "Of course, Mom, I'm not saying you have any problems. I'm just thinking about the future, about how to protect you." Melissa took her mother's hand. "You've always taken care of everyone. Now it's time for someone to take care of you." Evelyn looked at her daughter and for a moment saw again the girl she had raised. Maybe Melissa was really concerned. Maybe she was being paranoid by feeling suspicious. After all, who else could she trust if not her own daughter? "How would—" "For this transfer work," Melissa smiled, this time more genuinely, "it's very simple. I brought some papers for you to look at. You don't have to decide today, of course, but I want you to see that everything is very transparent, very secure." Melissa opened her purse and took out a folder with documents. Evelyn noticed that the papers were already filled out, only missing her signature. She felt another tightness in her chest, but Melissa began to explain each item with patience and affection, as if she were really taking care of her mother's interests. As she listened, Evelyn looked out the window and saw her flowers swaying in the afternoon breeze. They were flowers she had planted, cared for, seen born and die, and be reborn for decades. They were her flowers, on her land, in her house. Why then did she feel as if she were about to lose something very important? Evelyn spent the night tossing and turning in bed, rethinking every word of the conversation with Melissa. The documents were on the kitchen table where her daughter had left them for her to analyze calmly. Every time she looked at those papers, she felt a mixture of fear and guilt that she couldn't explain. The next morning, she decided to call Richard, her youngest son, who lived in another city. Richard had always been more direct than Melissa, less prone to dramatization. "Mom, it's good to hear your voice. How are things there?" "Richard, I need to ask you something. Melissa was here yesterday, talking about transferring the house to her name. She said it's to protect me from scams. Do you know anything about this?" There was silence on the other end of the line. Evelyn could hear Richard breathing, as if he were choosing his words. "Mom, Melissa mentioned something to me about this. Yes, she said she was concerned about your financial security. And what do you think?" "Look, Mom, I understand her concern. There really are a lot of scams these days, but I'm not sure if that's the only solution. How about talking to an independent lawyer, someone who doesn't have any connection to Melissa?" Evelyn felt an inexplicable relief. Richard wasn't pressuring her, wasn't automatically agreeing with Melissa. There was something in his suggestion that made sense. "Do you know any trustworthy lawyer?" "I do, Dr. Charles Miller. He's serious, honest. I can ask him to call you?" After the conversation with Richard, Evelyn felt a little calmer. Maybe it would be good to get a second opinion, even if Melissa wouldn't be happy about it. After all, it was her house, her decision. The phone rang again in the middle of the afternoon. It was Melissa, and Evelyn immediately noticed something different in her daughter's tone of voice. "Mom, did you talk to Richard today?" Evelyn hesitated. There was something in the question that sounded more like an accusation than curiosity. "I did. Why?" "He called me, concerned. Said you were confused about the documents, that you were thinking of consulting a lawyer. Mom, that made me very sad." "Why sad, dear?" "Because it seems like you don't trust me. I spent weeks researching, talking to professionals, trying to find the best way to protect you, and now you want to seek a second opinion as if I were a stranger." Evelyn felt the familiar guilt tighten her chest. Melissa was right. She had dedicated time and effort to help. Why was Evelyn being so distrustful? "It's not that I don't trust you, dear. It's just that it's a very important decision and—" "Mom, do you want to know the truth? Richard is jealous. He lives far away, can't take care of you like I do, and now he's trying to turn you against me." Evelyn frowned. Richard had seemed genuinely concerned about her, not jealous. "Melissa, I don't think—" "Mom, listen. I'll be very direct. Last night I received a call from an acquaintance who works at the registry office. He said there have been some recent cases of elderly people who were victims of scams because they delayed protecting their assets. One of them lost everything in a matter of days." Evelyn felt the fear return. "Really? Really? And you know, what's worse? Some of these scammers even pose as lawyers. They offer free consultations to gain people's trust and then pull even bigger scams. But Richard has known Dr. Charles for years." "Mom, are you sure?" "How can you be sure that this Dr. Charles is really who Richard says he is? Have you seen his office? Have you verified if he's really registered with the Bar Association?" Evelyn realized she didn't know anything about Dr. Charles beyond what Richard had said. She began to feel dizzy, confused. How could she know who to trust? "Melissa, I'm getting very anxious about all this." "I know, Mom, that's why I want to resolve it soon. The more time passes, the more vulnerable you become. Look, I'll propose something. How about we go to the registry office together tomorrow? You can ask all your questions directly to the notary. He's a public official, completely impartial." The suggestion seemed reasonable. Evelyn agreed, feeling a little more secure about having Melissa beside her for guidance. The next day, Melissa arrived early, dressed formally, carrying an organized folder with documents. In the car, she continued talking about the dangers lurking around people of Evelyn's age. "Mom, did you know that scammers have access to personal information through the internet? They discover where you live, how much your house is worth, even details about your family. Then they use all this to pull very convincing scams." Evelyn felt increasingly paranoid. She looked at each person on the street as if they were a potential scammer. Melissa seemed to notice her nervousness and held her hand, offering comfort. At the registry office, the notary explained the property transfer process. Evelyn asked several questions, and all the answers seemed to confirm what Melissa had said. The transfer would really be a way to protect the property. "But can I reverse this later if I change my mind?" asked Evelyn. The notary looked at Melissa before answering. "Well, technically it's possible, but it would be a more complicated process. The ideal is to be sure of the decision before signing." Melissa quickly added, "Mom, you won't want to reverse it. It's just protection. And if one day you decide to sell the house or do something with it, just ask me and I'll do everything in your name." Evelyn still felt something strange, but Melissa seemed so sure, so careful with every detail, and the notary, who was an authority, hadn't raised any serious objections. "Do I need time to think?" Melissa looked at her watch. "Mom, the registry office closes in an hour. If we want to do it today, it needs to be now. If we leave it for another day, you'll have to pay all the fees again, and that's expensive." Evelyn felt pressured by time. Melissa had paid the fees, had dedicated herself so much to helping her. It would be ungrateful to make her daughter spend money again just because she was being indecisive. "All right, I'll sign." While signing the documents, Evelyn tried to ignore the strange feeling in her stomach. Melissa smiled and hugged her, whispering, "Thank you for trusting me, Mom." On the way back, Melissa was more excited than Evelyn had seen her in months. She talked about future plans, about how Evelyn could now be at ease without worrying about scammers. By the way, Mom, now that the house is protected, I need to tell you about something else. I'm going through some financial difficulties. Nothing serious, but I need a small loan. Since the house is now in my name, I can use it as collateral. Evelyn felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. What do you mean, collateral? It's just bureaucracy, Mom. I need $50,000 to resolve some divorce issues. The bank requires collateral, so I'll use the house. But don't worry, it's just on paper. You won't even know it's happening. Evelyn tried to process what she was hearing. The house she had just transferred to protect her was going to be used as loan collateral on the same day. Melissa, this isn't what you said. Mom, you're getting nervous for nothing. I'm not going to lose the house. It's just a small loan which I'll pay properly. And look at the bright side. At least this way you can be sure that no scammer will be able to mess with your assets because they're already being used for something legitimate. Evelyn arrived home feeling completely lost. She had signed papers she didn't completely understand, based on fears that might not even be real. And now she discovered that her house was going to be used to guarantee a loan she didn't even know existed. That night, as she looked at the garden through the kitchen window, Evelyn wondered when she had lost control of her own life. And more importantly, how could she get it back? Evelyn couldn't sleep for 3 consecutive nights. With each passing hour, the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake grew inside her. On the 4th morning, she decided to do something she had never done in her life: distrust her own daughter. First, she called Dr. Charles Miller, the lawyer Richard had mentioned. To her surprise, he answered personally and agreed to see her that same afternoon without charging for the initial consultation. Dr. Charles's office was in an elegant building downtown. Evelyn arrived nervous, but was greeted kindly by a man of approximately 60, with a serious but welcoming appearance. Mrs. Evelyn, Richard told me a bit about your situation. Can you explain to me exactly what happened? Evelyn told him everything, from the first conversation with Melissa to signing the documents at the registry office. Dr. Charles listened attentively, taking notes and frowning at times. Mrs. Evelyn, did you bring a copy of the documents you signed? Evelyn handed over the papers Melissa had left with her. Dr. Charles examined them carefully, his expression becoming increasingly grave. Mrs. Evelyn, I need to be honest with you. These documents are not just a property transfer for protection. Your daughter is now the sole legal owner of the house. You no longer have any rights to the property. Evelyn felt the world spin. But she said I would still be the owner, that it was just on paper. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And there's one more worrying thing here. Dr. Charles pointed to a clause in the document. See this. There's an authorization for your daughter to use the property as collateral for loans without needing your permission. She already told me she's going to take out a loan. $50,000. Evelyn was startled. How do you know? Dr. Charles sighed. Because this type of situation is more common than you might imagine. Mrs. Evelyn, with all due respect, you were a victim of manipulation. Your daughter wasn't trying to protect you, she was ensuring access to your assets. Evelyn began to cry. They weren't just tears of sadness, but of anger, humiliation, disbelief. How had she been so naive? Dr. Charles, can I do anything? Yes, you can. But it will be a difficult battle. We'll need to prove there was coercion, emotional manipulation. And your daughter will probably try to argue that you don't have the mental capacity to make decisions. Evelyn straightened in her chair. Doctor, I may be 71 years old, but my mind works perfectly well. I was just deceived by someone. I trusted. Then let's fight. But I need you to understand something. This will mean a definitive rupture with your daughter. She won't forgive you for questioning her publicly. Evelyn thought of the decades of sacrifices, the sleepless nights caring for Melissa when she was a child, the loans she had made to help her over the years. She thought of the trust she had placed in her daughter and how that trust had been betrayed. Doctor, I'd rather live alone with dignity than live deceived, surrounded by false love. Dr. Charles smiled for the first time since the beginning of the conversation. Then let's begin. But first I need you to do a few things. I'm going to ask a private investigator to verify your daughter's real financial situation. I suspect she's in a much worse situation than she told you." 2 days later, the investigator brought information that left Evelyn in shock. Melissa wasn't just having financial difficulties. She owed more than $200,000 to banks and loan sharks. The new car she drove was rented, the apartment where she lived was about to be repossessed by the bank, and she had lost her job 6 months ago without telling her mother. "Mrs. Evelyn," explained the investigator, "your daughter wasn't lying when she said she needed money, but she omitted the severity of the situation, and there's something else. She's already tried this type of scam with other family members. Your aunt almost lost a piece of land to her last year." Evelyn remembered Aunt Constance, her mother's sister, who had vaguely commented about problems with Melissa months ago. At the time, Evelyn hadn't given it importance, thinking it was just a family misunderstanding. Armed with this information, Evelyn decided it was time to confront Melissa directly. She called her daughter and arranged a meeting at home for the next day. Melissa arrived excited, carrying flowers and a bottle of wine. "Hi, Mom. I brought some things to celebrate. The loan was approved yesterday. Now I can solve all my problems." Evelyn looked at the flowers and felt a mixture of sadness and anger. They were flowers bought with money Melissa didn't have, to celebrate a loan secured by a house that had been obtained through lies. "Melissa, I need to talk seriously with you." "Of course, Mom. What is it?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "I know the truth. I know that you lost your job. I know about the debts. I know that you lied about everything." Melissa's expression changed instantly. The smile disappeared and she turned pale. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Melissa, don't underestimate me. I hired an investigator. I know everything." Melissa tried to deny, then tried to minimize, then tried to justify. But when she realized that Evelyn really knew everything, she changed her strategy. "Mom, okay, I lied about some things, but it was just to not worry you. I really was trying to protect the house too." "Protect it for whom? For you to use as collateral? Mom, you don't understand what it's like to be in my situation. I have children to support, bills to pay. You have this big house just for you, worth a fortune. It's selfish to keep all this while your own daughter is suffering." Evelyn was surprised by the coldness of the response. "Selfish? Melissa, I've helped you your entire life. I paid for your college, helped with your wedding, lent you money countless times. When did this become an obligation and not a gesture of love?" "Mom, you're being dramatic. It's not like I'm going to leave you on the street. You can continue living here. The only difference is that now I have the legal right to the property. And if you can't pay back the loan?" Melissa hesitated. "I will." "And if you can't?" "Mom, stop being pessimistic. You've always been like this, always seeing the bad side of things." Evelyn recognized the tactic. Melissa was trying to turn the tables, make her feel guilty for questioning her daughter's actions. It was a strategy that had worked for decades, but it wouldn't work anymore. "Melissa, I want my house back." "Mom, legally the house is mine now. You signed the papers." "Under coercion and based on lies." Melissa laughed, but it was a laugh without humor. "Good luck trying to prove that. Who's going to believe you? A 71-year-old lady against the word of her own daughter? Besides, everyone will think you're going senile anyway." It was at that moment that Evelyn knew she had lost her daughter forever. The Melissa who was there in front of her was no longer the child she had raised with so much love. She was a stranger, willing to destroy her own mother to get what she wanted. "Melissa, know that I will fight. I'll go to the courts. I'll make public what you did." Melissa got up, grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Do whatever you want, Mom, but remember, I have the law on my side now. And you, what do you have?" After Melissa left, Evelyn was alone in the house that had been hers all her life and that now officially belonged to someone else. But for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel defeated. She felt determined. The months that followed were the most difficult of Evelyn's life, but also the most transformative. Dr. Charles worked tirelessly on the case, and Evelyn discovered an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. The legal process began with Melissa trying exactly what she had predicted, questioning her mother's mental capacity. She got a lawyer who argued that Evelyn was suffering from cognitive decline and that the transfer of the house had been a lucid decision to protect her from herself. Evelyn was subjected to extensive psychological and neurological examinations. All the results confirmed what she always knew. Her mind was perfectly healthy. More than that, the psychologist noted that Evelyn demonstrated exceptional mental clarity for her age and impressive determination. During the hearings, Evelyn had to listen to Melissa tell a distorted version of the facts, painting herself as a concerned daughter who was trying to protect an increasingly confused and vulnerable mother. There were moments when Evelyn almost doubted herself, especially when Melissa cried in court, seeming genuinely concerned. But Dr. Charles had prepared a solid defense. The private investigator brought evidence of Melissa's debts, the lies about her job, the previous attempts to get money from other relatives. Most importantly, they managed to prove that Melissa had started taking out the loan using the house as collateral just 2 days after the transfer, demonstrating premeditation. The decisive moment came when Dr. Charles called Aunt Constance to testify. The 83-year-old woman told with precise details how Melissa had tried to convince her to transfer a piece of land a few months earlier, using arguments almost identical to those she had used with Evelyn. "She told me it was to protect the land from scammers," Aunt Constance recounted with a firm voice. "But when I refused, she got very angry and said that people our age shouldn't make decisions alone. She said we were stubborn and that this would cause us problems." Evelyn saw Melissa turn pale in the dock. The manipulation strategy had been exposed as a pattern of behavior, not an isolated case motivated by genuine concern. The judge was clear in his decision. The transfer had been obtained through psychological coercion and false information. The house was immediately returned to Evelyn's name, and Melissa was ordered to pay all the costs of the process. But the legal victory was just the beginning of Evelyn's true transformation. In the months following the trial, she began to rebuild her life in a way she had never imagined possible. First, she decided to travel. Using part of the money she had saved over the years, Evelyn visited places she had always dreamed of knowing, but had never had the courage to visit alone. She went to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, walked the streets of Boston, explored the Etah beaches of Florida. On each trip, she discovered that she was more capable and independent than she had ever given herself credit for. Back in her city, Evelyn enrolled in a painting course. She discovered she had a talent for watercolors and began painting landscapes inspired by her travels. Her works caught the attention of other students, and she was invited to participate in a local exhibition. She also volunteered in a project to help elderly victims of family scams. Her experience and strength inspired many other people who were going through similar situations. Evelyn discovered that helping others reclaim their dignity made her feel more alive than she had felt in decades. Richard visited his mother regularly, impressed with the transformation he saw in her. "Mom, you seem like a different person," he said during a Sunday lunch. "I am a different person, son. For the first time in my life, I'm living for myself, not to meet the expectations or needs of others." "And Melissa? Do you miss her?" Evelyn thought carefully before answering. "I miss the Melissa I thought she was, but I don't miss the person she really became. I learned that true love doesn't manipulate, doesn't lie, doesn't emotionally blackmail. True love respects." Melissa tried to re-establish contact a few times. She sent flowers on Evelyn's birthday, called at Christmas, showed up at the door, once asking for forgiveness. But Evelyn had learned to recognize emotional manipulation and remained firm in her boundaries. "Mom, I know I made mistakes," said Melissa during her last attempt at reconciliation. "But I'm your daughter. You can't abandon me forever." Evelyn looked at Melissa with compassion but without wavering in her decision. "Melissa, you will always be my daughter in the biological sense, but daughter in the emotional sense, in the sense of someone who loves and respects me, that you chose not to be. I didn't abandon you. You abandoned the values I tried to teach you." "Mom, everyone deserves a second chance." "Everyone does deserve one, yes. But some people need to prove they've changed before receiving that chance. You're still living in the apartment you got with the money from the illegal loan you tried to take out using my house. You still haven't returned the money you owe me from previous loans. You still haven't publicly admitted what you did. How can I believe you've changed?" Melissa didn't know how to respond and left. She didn't come back. 1 year after the trial, Evelyn was in her garden, tending to the flowers on a sunny morning, when she realized how at peace she felt. It wasn't the peace of resignation or conformity she had known all her life. It was the peace of someone who had fought for her rights and won, the peace of someone who had learned to value herself. The phone rang, as it always rang, but now Evelyn looked at the device and decided whether she wanted to answer or not, based on how she felt, not on the obligation to always be available to everyone. It was Dr. Charles. "Mrs. Evelyn, how are you? I called to see if you'd like to participate in a lecture I'm giving about the rights of the elderly. Your story could inspire many people." Evelyn smiled. "Dr. Charles, it would be an honor. I want people to know that it's never too late to defend yourself, never too late to start over." After hanging up the phone, Evelyn returned to the garden. Her flowers were more beautiful than ever, flourishing under her attentive care. Like herself, they had found the strength to grow even after difficult storms. That afternoon, while painting a watercolor of the roses in her garden, Evelyn reflected on everything she had learned. She had discovered that being a good person didn't mean being anyone's doormat. She had discovered that true love requires boundaries and mutual respect. She had discovered that it's never too late to reinvent yourself, to fight for your rights, to live the life you want. Most importantly, she had discovered that her own company was pleasant and sufficient. She no longer needed the constant approval of others to feel valued. Her self-esteem no longer depended on how much she could help or please the people around her. When she finished the painting, Evelyn placed it next to the others she had made in recent months. It was a small art gallery created by her in her house with her own hands. It was a gallery that no one could take from her because it represented something she had conquered alone, her freedom. That night, before going to sleep, Evelyn looked one last time through the bedroom window at the garden illuminated by the moon. Her flowers swayed gently in the night breeze, secure in their soil, in her house under her protection. For the first time in 71 years, Evelyn felt completely in control of her own life. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that Evelyn's story has deeply touched your hearts and inspired you to reflect on the importance of defending our dignity and independence, no matter what age we are. Evelyn's journey shows us that it's never too late to recognize our own strength and value, even when the people closest to us try to manipulate or diminish us. To continue this emotional journey with us, we've prepared a special playlist with equally touching and transformative stories about courage, family, and self-discovery. You can find it here by clicking on the left side of the screen. If Evelyn's story moved you as much as it moved us to create, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that explore the challenges and beauties of human life. Stories that remind us that each of us has the right to live with dignity and respect. Don't miss our upcoming content and tell us in the comments what impacted you most about Evelyn's story. Your reflections enrich our community and inspire us to